increases in Indiana. The second component of the plan is massive tax breaks for the very top. Trillions of dollars of tax breaks for people just like Donald Trump.
You're so
The problem
greedy.
with this, Elaine, is that's exactly what we did 10 years ago, and it put the economy into the deepest recession since the 1930s. Independent analysts say the Clinton plan would grow the economy by 10.5 million jobs. The Trump plan would cost 3.5 million jobs. And Donald Trump, why would he do this? Because his tax plan basically helps him. And if he ever met his promise, and he gave his tax returns to the American public like he said he would, we would see just how much his economic plan is really a Trump first plan.
On that point, Governor Pence recently, the New York Times released part of Mr. Trump's 1995 tax return and reported that he could have avoided paying federal income taxes for years. Yesterday, Mr. Trump said he brilliantly used the laws to pay as little tax as legally possible. Does that seem fair to you?
Yes, everybody does.
Let me say it. I appreciated your hire and your fire thing. Senator, you use that a whole lot. And I think you're running that use a lot. Pre-done lines. Look, what you all just heard out there is more taxes, $2 trillion in more spending, more deficits, more debt, more government. And if you think that's all working, then you look at the other side of the table. And the truth of the matter is, the policies of this administration, which Hillary Clinton and Senator King want to continue to run this economy into a ditch, we're in the slowest economic recovery since the Great Depression. There are millions more people living in poverty today than the day that Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton had his son.
And the poverty median income
the lowest
improved dramatically between 2014 and 2015.
Honestly, Senator, you can roll out the numbers and the sunny side, but I got to tell you, people in Scranton, no different. People in Fort Worth, no different. This economy is struggling. And the answer to this economy is not more taxes.
But it's not away tax relief to the folks at the top. And so I am interested in hearing whether he'll defend his running mates not releasing taxes.
Yeah, absolutely, I will.
Governor, with all due respect, the question was about whether it seems fair to you that Mr. Trump said he brilliantly used the laws to pay as little tax as legally possible.
Well, this is probably the difference between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton and Senator Kaine. I mean, Hillary Clinton and Senator Kaine, and God bless you for it, career public servants, that's great. Donald Trump is a businessman, not a career politician. He actually built a business. Those tax returns that came out publicly this week showed that he faced some pretty tough times 20 years ago. But like virtually every other business, including the New York Times not too long ago, he used what's called net operating loss. We have a tax code, Senator, that actually is designed to encourage entrepreneurship.
But why won't he release his tax return?
Well, we're answering a question about the business thing. His tax return that showed he went through a very difficult time, but he used the tax code just the way it's supposed to be used, and he did it brilliantly.
How do you know
he
that?
created a runway because he's created a business that's worth billions of dollars.
How do you know that?
And with regard to paying taxes, riff about not paying taxes and people saying he didn't pay taxes for years. Donald Trump has created tens of thousands of jobs, and he's paid payroll taxes, sales taxes.
Senator, I'm going to give you about 30 seconds to respond, and I have a question on Social Security.
He's going to raise taxes, and Donald Trump and I are going to go.
Donald Trump started this campaign in 2014. He said, if I run for president, I will absolutely release my taxes. He's broken his first promise. Second, he stood on the stage last week, and when Hillary said you haven't been paying taxes, he said, that makes me smart. So it's smart not to pay for our military. It's smart not to pay for veterans. It's smart not to pay for teachers. And I guess all of us who do pay for those things, I guess we're stupid. And the last thing I'll say the last thing I want to ask Governor Pence.
I do.
Governor Pence had to give Donald Trump his tax returns to show he was qualified to be vice president. Donald Trump must give the American public his tax returns to show that he's qualified to be president, and he's breaking his promise.
Elaine, I have to respond to this.
You get very little time.
I'll be very respectful. Look, Donald Trump has filed over 100 pages of financial disclosure, which is what the law requires.
But he said he
The
would release his
American
tax
people
returns.
can review that, and he's going, Senator,
All right,
he's going to release
I
his
need to
tax
ask you
returns, and the
about
audit
Social
is
Security.
over.
Richard
People
Nixon
care
released
about.
tax returns when he was
They're
under
gonna
audit.
raise your taxes.
Gentlemen,
We're
If
gonna
you
cut
can't
your
meet
taxes.
the
Gentlemen,
Nixon
the people
standard,
at home cannot
people ought to
understand
have some.
either one of you when you speak over each other. I would please ask you to wait until.
I love the moderator. That's good.
Look at this case.
She should be, no, thank you. She should be doing the presidential. Not Anderson Cooper.
$7,500 per year. What would your administration do to prevent this cut?
First, we're going to protect Social Security, which is one of the greatest programs that the American government has ever done. It happened at a time when you would work your whole life, raising your kids, working, being a
Social
little
Security.
teacher, a Sunday school teacher.
Hey,
and then you
it's
would
about
retire
Social Security.
into poverty. And Social Security has enabled people to retire with dignity and overwhelmingly.
Dignity?
We have to keep it solvent. And we
Dignity?
And we'll look for strategies like adjusting the payroll tax cap upward in order to do that. Here's what Hillary and I will not do. And I want to make this very plain. We will never, ever engage in a risky scheme to privatize Social Security. Donald Trump wrote a book and he said Social Security is a Ponzi scheme and privatization would be good for all of us. And when Congressman Pence was in Congress, he was the chief cheerleader for the privatization of Social Security. Even after President Bush stopped pushing for it, Congressman Pence kept pushing for it. We're going to stand up against efforts to privatize Social Security, and we'll look for ways to keep it solvent going forward, focusing primarily on the payroll tax cap.
Governor Pence, I'll give you an opportunity to
What?
respond.
Well,
Private Social
thanks,
Security?
Wayne. There they go again.
What's that mean?
Okay.
I don't know.
All Donald Trump.
Private Social Security.
They're gonna
about Social Security is
privatize.
We're gonna meet our obligations to our seniors. That's
They
it.
definitely gonna
We
change.
said we're going to meet the obligations of Medicare. That's what this campaign is really about, Senator. And I get, this is the old scare tactic that they roll out.
But you have a voting record,
And I
Governor.
get all of that. I just, look, there's a question that you asked a little bit.
Can I talk over?
Defend your-
Hey, shut
I
up!
have to go back to.
Barbara.
You're running the favor.
That's like this, her, she go like this, put her finger on the head. You shut up.
$2 trillion.
You already told them, don't
You
talk
say
over
you're
each
gonna
other.
Keep the promises of Social Security. Donald Trump and I are going to cut taxes. We're
You're not going to cut taxes. You're going to raise taxes.
So we'll meet the obligations of Social Security and Medicare.
All right.
We stay on the path that your party has us on. We're going to be in a mountain range of debt, and we're going to face hard choices.
Gentlemen, I want to move on
You did
now.
ask this question about debt, and the debt explosion on the Trump plan is much, much bigger than anything on the Clinton side.
Talk over top of them.
To the issue of law enforcement and race relations, law enforcement and race relations.
I'm for.
After the Dallas police shooting, Police Chief David Brown said, quote, "We're asking cops to do too much in this country. Every societal failure, we put it off on the cops to solve. Not enough mental health funding, not enough drug addiction funding, schools fail. Let's give it to the cops." Do we ask too much of police officers in this country? And how would you specifically address the chief's concerns, Senator Kennedy?
Elaine, I think that's a very fair comment. I think we put a lot on police shoulders, and this is something I got a lot of scar tissue and experience on. I was a city councilman and mayor in Richmond, and when I came in, we had one of the highest homicide rates in the United States. We fought very, very hard over the course of my time in local office with our police department, and we reduced our homicide rate nearly in half. And then when I was governor of Virginia, we worked hard too. And we did something we had really wanted to do. For the first time ever, we cracked the top 10 safest states because we worked together. Here's what I learned as a mayor and a governor. The way you make communities safer and the way you make police safer is through community policing. You build the bonds between the community and the police force, build bonds of understanding. And then when people feel comfortable in their communities, that gap between the police and the communities they serve narrows. And when that gap narrows, it's safe for the communities and it's safer for the police. That model still works across our country, but there are some other models that don't work. An overly aggressive, more militarized model. Donald Trump recently said we need to do more stop and frisk around the country. That would be a big mistake. because it polarizes the relationship between the police and the community.
Chicago needs something,
We'll
Chris.
focus on community policing.
Chicago needs
We will
stuff.
Under
focus on-
special
and
circumstances, they
Hillary
need
Clinton
it.
has rolled out a really comprehensive mental health reform package that she worked on with law enforcement.
550 have died
And we
this
will
year
also
so far
fight
there.
the scourge of gun violence in the United States. I'm a gun owner. I'm a strong Second Amendment supporter. But I got a lot of scar tissue because when I was governor of Virginia, there was a horrible shooting at Virginia Tech. And we learned that through that painful situation, that gaps in the background.
It was that Korean bar.
Should have been closed and it could have prevented that crime. And so we're going to work to do things like close background record checks. And if we do, we won't have the tragedy that we did. One of those killed at Virginia Tech was a guy named William Rescue. He was a 70-plus-year-old Romanian Holocaust survivor. He'd survived the Holocaust. Then he survived the Soviet Union takeover of this country. But then he was a visiting professor at Virginia Tech, and he couldn't survive the scourge of gun violence. We can support the Second Amendment and do things like background record checks and make us safer, and that will make police safer too.
Governor Pence.
You know, my uncle was a cop, career cop, on the beat in downtown Chicago. He was my hero when I was growing up. When we go up to visit my dad's family in Chicago, my three brothers and I would marvel at my uncle when he would come out in his uniform, sidearm at his side.
Yeah.
Police officers are the best of us.
Mama, what's wrong?
Men and women,
Yeah,
white,
excuse me?
African, Asian, Latino, Hispanic, they put their lives on the line every single day. And let me say, at the risk of agreeing with you, community policing is a great idea. It's worked in the Hoosier State, and we fully support that. Donald Trump and I are going to make sure that law enforcement have the resources and the tools to be able to really restore law and order to the cities and communities of this nation. It's probably why the 330,000 members of the Fraternal Order of Police endorsed Donald Trump as the next president of the United States of America, because they see his commitment to them. They see his commitment to law and order. But they also hear the bad mouthing that comes from people that seize upon tragedy in the wake of police action shootings as a reason to use a broad brush to accuse law enforcement of implicit bias or institutional racism, and that really has got to stop. I mean, when an African American police officer in Charlotte named Brentley Vincent, an all-star football player who went to Liberty University here in the state, came home, followed his dad into law enforcement, joined the force in Charlotte in 2014, was involved in a police action shooting that claimed the life of Keith Lamont Scott. It was a tragedy. I mean, we mourn with those who mourn. We grieve with those who grieve. We're saddened at the loss of life. But Hillary Clinton actually referred to that moment as an example of implicit bias in the police force, where she used, when she was asked in the debate a week ago whether there was an implicit bias in law enforcement, her only answer was that there's implicit bias in everyone in the United States. I just think what we ought to do is we ought to stop seizing on these moments of tragedy. We ought to assure the public that we'll have a full and complete and transparent investigation whenever there's a loss of life because of police action. But Senator, please, enough of this seeking every opportunity to demean law enforcement broadly, like making an accusation of implicit bias every time tragedy.
Elaine, people shouldn't be afraid to bring up issues of bias in law enforcement. And if you're afraid to have if you're afraid to have the discussion, you'll never solve it. And so here's an example, heartbreaking. We would agree this is a heartbreaking example. The guy Philando Castile, who was killed in St. Paul, who was a valued worker in a local school, and he was killed for no apparent reason in an incident that will be discussed and will be investigated. But when folks went and explored this situation, what they found is that Philando Castile, who was they called him Mr. Rogers with dreadlocks in the school that he worked. The kids loved him. That he had been stopped by police 40 or 50 times before that fatal incident. And if you look at sentencing in this country, African Americans and Latinos get sentenced for the same crimes at very different rates.
We need
And
criminal justice reform.
we do.
Indiana has passed criminal
But
justice.
I just want to say, those who say
That's
we
not what
should
they're
not
talking about.
we should not be able to bring up and talk about bias in the system,
Senator,
will never
When
solve
an
the problem.
African American police officer is involved in a police action shooting involving an African American, why would Hillary Clinton accuse that African American police officer of
I guess I can't believe you are defending the position that there is no bias and it's a topic.
Governor Pence, I have a question on that
not make
point.
that statement.
Your fellow Republican, Governor Pence, Senator Tim Scott, who is African American, recently spoke on the Senate floor. He said he was stopped 7 times by law enforcement in 1 year. He said, I have felt the anger, the frustration, the sadness, and the humiliation that comes with feeling like you're being targeted for nothing more than being just yourself. What would you say to Senator Scott about his experiences?
Well, I have the deepest respect for Senator Scott, and he's a close friend. And what I would say is that we need to adopt criminal justice reform nationally. I signed criminal justice reform in the state of Indiana, Senator, and we're very proud of it. I worked when I was in Congress on the Second Chance Act. We have got to do a better job recognizing and correcting the errors in the system that do reflect institutional bias in criminal justice. But what Donald Trump and I are saying is, let's not have the reflex of assuming the worst of men and women in law enforcement. We truly do believe that law enforcement is not a force for racism or division in our country. Law enforcement in this country is a force for good. They truly are people that put their lives on the line every single day. But I would suggest to you, what we need to do is assert a stronger leadership at the national level to support law enforcement. You just heard Senator Kaine reject a stop and frisk. Well, I would suggest to you that the families that live in our inner cities that are besieged by crime.
What would you tell Senator Scott?
If I can, Jeff, but I've heard Senator Scott make that eloquent plea. And look, criminal justice is about respecting the law and being respected by the law. So there is a fundamental respect issue here. And I just want to talk about the tone that's set from the top. Donald Trump during his campaign has called Mexicans rapists and criminals. He's called women slobs, pigs, dogs, disgusting. I don't like saying that in front of my wife and my mother. He attacked an Indiana-born federal judge and said he was unqualified to hear a federal lawsuit because his parents were Mexican. He went after John McCain, a POW, and said he wasn't a hero because he'd been captured. He said African Americans are living in hell. And he perpetrated this outrageous and bigoted lie that President Obama is not a U.S. citizen. If you want to have a society where people are respected and respect laws, you can't have somebody at the top who demeans every group that he talks about. And I cannot believe that Governor Pence will defend the insult-driven campaign that Donald Trump has run.
All right, I want to turn to our next segment now, immigration. Your running mates have both said that undocumented immigrants who have committed violent crimes should be deported. What would you tell the millions of undocumented immigrants who have not committed violent crimes? Governor Pence.
Donald Trump's laid out a plan to end illegal immigration once and for all in this country. We've been talking it to death for 20 years. Hillary Clinton and Tim Kaine want to continue the policies of open borders, amnesty, catch and release, sanctuary cities, all the things that are driving wages down in this country, Senator. And also, too often, with criminal aliens in the country, it's bringing heartbreak. But Donald Trump has a plan that he laid out in Arizona that will deal systematically with illegal immigration, beginning with border security, internal enforcement. It's probably why, for the first time in the history of Immigrations and Customs Enforcement, their union actually endorsed Donald Trump as the next president of the United States, because they know they need help to enforce the laws in this country. And Donald Trump has laid out a priority to remove criminal aliens, remove people who've overstayed their visas. And once we have accomplished all of that, which will strengthen our economy, strengthen the rule of law in the country, and make our communities safer once the criminal aliens are out, then we'll deal with those that remain. But I have to tell you, I was listening to the avalanche of insults coming out of Senator Kane.
These were Donald.
He says,
Hold on a second.
It's my time, Senator.
He said, I apologize. This is your 2 minutes.
Thanks, I forgive you.
My
He
turn
said
to talk.
ours is an insult-driven campaign. Did you all just hear that? Ours is an insult-driven campaign. I mean, to be honest with you, if Donald Trump had said all the things that you said he said, in the way you said he said them, he still wouldn't have a fraction of the insults that Hillary Clinton leveled when she said that half of our supporters were a basket of deplorables. She said they were irredeemable. They were not American. I mean, it's extraordinary. And then she laid one after another ism on millions of Americans who believe that we can have a stronger America at home and abroad, who believe we can get this economy moving again, who believe that we can end illegal immigration once and for all. So, Senator, this insult-driven campaign, I mean, that's small potatoes compared to Hillary Clinton calling half of Donald Trump's supporters a basket of deplorables.
Hillary Clinton the very next day she said, you should have said that.
This is Senator Kane's 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, that's right. So now we're even.
Yeah.
Now read it.
Look for
Now read
Donald
it.
Trump apologizing to John McCain for saying he wasn't the hero. To Donald Trump
He's back on that
for
again.
calling women slobs, pigs, dogs, disgusting.
She apologized for saying
Did Donald Trump apologize for taking after somebody in the Twitter war and making fun of her weight? Did he apologize for saying African Americans are living in hell? Did he apologize for saying President Obama was not even a citizen of the United States? You will look in vain to see Donald Trump ever taking responsibility for anybody in apologizing. Immigration. There's 2 things on the table. Hillary and I believe in comprehensive immigration. Donald Trump believes in deportation nation. You got to pick your choice. Hillary and I want a bipartisan reform that will put keeping families together as the top goal. Second, that will